Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrea, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with...
Rob H. This is AV Rant, the show where we answer your questions about home theater and all things audio-video. I have no idea where the time went this week, and I have no idea how we managed to gather as many questions as we did, because as they were trickling in throughout the week, I was like, oh, I think we've only got like 4 questions and like 3 comments, and then I put together the list, and I'm like, oh, wait, no, we definitely have more than that. So once again, thank you very much to the AV Rant community. We've got another packed show.
We do have another packed show, and I almost canceled. Because Tuesday, so we record these Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday afternoon, I started to feel like a little tickle at the back of my throat. By Tuesday night, I couldn't swallow. I couldn't sleep that night. And next morning, I went to the doctor telling him I was positive I had strep throat.
Mm-hmm.
Positive I had strep throat. Like, have you done this, or this? I'm like, no, I work from home. I'm a loser. And they're like, well, you don't have strep throat, dude. I'm like, I must, because it hurts really bad. They're like, no, you don't. So I did all the tests and everything. Apparently, I had a sinus infection that was coming on. Usually, sinus infections come on through my teeth. I can feel my teeth start to hurt. That's what tells me I've got one coming. So I've been on antibiotics. And last night, I was coughing so bad I could not finish a sentence. So, yeah. I will be, that sound that you're hearing as I talk, that is the sound of cough drops rolling around in my mouth. I literally, if I was still trying to lose weight, I would be factoring in the 14 calories per cough drop in multiples of hundreds of calories that I have been sucking down a day trying to get myself to be able to talk. So,
well, just remember, folks, this is how much Tom loves you. So, gotta show the love
sound of my own voice. But, yes, so I have been sick, and that has not been good for me, and that is why the podcast took so long to come up last week, and I'm sorry. And then somebody noted right away that the time sync was off. I had noticed that when I was editing the podcast, and I thought I had fixed it, but I hadn't gone back far enough in the podcast and hadn't fixed it in the right place. They identified the correct spot, and I fixed it, and now it's fixed, and everybody's happy. So sorry about that. For those of you that were confused or that were worried about it, I got an email about it later. Sorry, if you re-download it, it should be all nice and synced up now. There you go. Yay.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Is there anything that we wanted to cover, like, right away before, even before I start talking about the
topic list?
The topic list and our contact information, all that?
Well, we may as well mention the fun news about Star Wars and just get that out of the way, because Rian Johnson, the guy who wrote and directed Looper and Brick, a couple of really good movies,
I love both those movies quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. He got tapped to write and direct for sure Episode 8, and then the reports are like conflicting, but they're saying he's basically in charge of the story for Episode 9, but might not be the final writer and director of those. That's still up in the air. I mean, hey, that movie's like at least 5 years away, right? So, anyway, that was from listener Nicholas B. He tipped us off about that news. So
honestly, I take all of this with a grain of salt until somebody actually, until they start filming the movie. And even then, I've seen movies where, I mean, we all have, where it starts off with one director and halfway through they change, and halfway, they change again. Every once in a while, those movies come out great. Most of the time, not so much. So we'll just see how this works out.
Written by committee is not usually a good thing. Yes, we will see. But I mean, that's cool for Rian Johnson, if nothing else. I mean,
yeah. Well, to have his name battered around is for sure. And I did really, I was so surprised at Brick when I saw it the first time. I was just amazed. It was one of those movies, like, afterwards you're like, I'm not sure what I just saw, but I think I loved it. You know what I mean? It was that sort of experience. So, really good movie. It's set in a high school. If you haven't seen it before, it's set in a high school, but everybody talks like they're from the Rat Pack, right? Rat Pack is is all that 50s, sort of real... was it Sly Shade or whatever his name was, the investigator and all that. So, yeah, real cool. It's set in the high school, a current high school, but everybody has this sort of very slick, very fast talking repartee, which is really, really interesting to hear. So, anyhow, if you want to be on the podcast, and by be on I mean ask us a question and have us answer it, we will mention your name, or not, if you really don't want to. You can contact us, Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant, avrant.com. Come to the website, which is, of course, avrant.com. Go to the facebook.com/avrantpodcast, and you can post over there. And, of course, we have Twitter. You can tweet us at @FirstReflect for Rob or at avrant_Tom for me. We do have a couple listeners of the week this week. These are listeners that have donated to the podcast to help keep the podcast afloat. You do not have to donate to get your question answered, and in fact, it will do nothing to speed up the answer of your question. So,
yes, if I received your question towards the end of Sunday or something like that, even if you donated, it's still going at the end of the list because
we do these, and we will reorder them if they make sense to reorder. But generally speaking, it's the order in which they are received. It's one of those waiting list things. At least we don't have really bad. That's right. At least we don't have really bad wait music. Well, maybe we do if you don't like our intro outro music. Anyways, excuse me.
Oh, he's coming. Well, I will then mention a big thank you to Juan F. And another big thank you to Jared M. Jared actually sent us a really nice message saying that he's been listening to the back catalog of AV Rant episodes, and he was still devastated. His word, devastated, when he got to the episode where AV Rant went on hiatus there for several months, even though obviously he knew that we do come back after that hiatus.
When Tom threw his hissy fit. Basically, is what that happened. That was when Tom got his feelings hurt and said, "Screw it! I'm taking my balls and going home." And I'm not ashamed to admit that was pretty much what happened.
I was really worried at the time that maybe we got sued by that stupid patent troll who's going around suing everybody who's making podcasts. So
oh my God, that didn't even occur to
Adam
me.
Carolla, who's actually fighting that. Let's cheer on that guy. He's taking donations and actually going to try and take that guy to court. So
good. That guy's got. Adam Carolla in particular has a very strange head. But I used to watch that beer show that he had on with FX or Spike, or whatever it is now, whatever it was.
Well, it was Comedy Central at the time. He had the Man Show, right?
The Man Show, that's it, with the beer. The beer, ziggy, 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 oi, oi, whatever. Anyways, I used to watch that because beer. All right. Let's go through some of our topics we'll be talking about tonight, so you know what you're in store for. There's a couple of comments and suggestions and stuff like that. We've got some things about soundstage depth. Jefferson has got some information on the amp that he bought on our recommendation. Efrain's got some information for Paul on 7.1 recordings. Cesar has tried out the Rocketfish wireless subwoofer kit that everybody recommends and that he was actually looking for in the first place, and didn't like it, but got something else that really worked. We'll tell you what that is. Damon, he's asking about quiet dehumidifiers because he's got a humid home theater and it needs to be addressed. John is looking for a 5.1 sound system for $1,000. That's going to be a receiver and speakers, it looks like. So that's good because $1,000 doesn't get you much of a TV if you try to get those other things too. That was who? That was John. Steve is looking for a way to set up to connect his subwoofers to his receiver when one of them is going to be wired and one of them is going to use one of these aftermarket wireless solutions. Cameron wants a portable DAC, and I have some experience with those, and Rob's got some suggestions. John has some follow-up in-ceiling speaker and subwoofer questions. Subwoofer questions are popular. Dan's got some acoustical panels, or he's ordered some acoustical panels and wants to know where we think he should place them. Jason's got a question about that recommended maximum power rating that some speakers have on them, like, oh, don't give them more than 150 watts, or it's like feeding gremlins, they go evil. Matthew wants to know how to handle adding 2 more subwoofers to the 2 he already has. He wants 4. Yay! Gary has quite a few questions, some we skipped from last week, and you still made it to the bottom of the list, Gary. I just want to say, we just said we did them chronologically, and Rob puts you at the bottom of the list. Well, I swear, Gary, we will answer at least some of your questions this week. Okay, we're not gonna keep.
I'm sorry, Gary.
You're gonna be the Matt Damon of the show, right? Isn't that Matt Damon keeps getting they keep saying that
Jimmy Kimmel
keeps bumping them. Yep, it's going to be Gary. That's not going to happen, Gary. We will. I swear we will answer. I can't believe he's at the bottom of this. Gary's got a whole crap ton of questions because he's got last week's questions plus this week's questions. And usually they're about video, but this time it looks like they're about Dolby Atmos, which is, of course, a popular topic right now. Carlos and Jared, this is another Jared question. We will probably not get to these questions, but wants us to list our favorite speakers in different price points. I can already tell you, Carlos, that is not going to be a question I'm going to be very comfortable answering because I haven't heard every speaker in every price point. But that being said, I might be willing to go on Facebook, Rob, and maybe we can post something over there,
Right.
doing some sort of pollish sort of thing where people can just respond about that, because I'd be interested in hearing what other people think are the best $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $5,000 speaker, something like that. That'd be interesting to hear.
Sure.
And Jared wants us to list our favorite demo material, which again we probably won't get to, but because we got to answer Gary or literally we'll end up having just a Gary show someday. It's like, okay, this is the Gary show where we answer all the Gary questions that we bumped. Once again, let's thank Juan and Jared for donating to the podcast. If you want to do that, go to avrant.com. On the right side, there will be a little coffee cup. You may click on it, and when you click on it, it will give you the option to PayPal us some money, the amount of your choosing. We do not dictate that to you. And we would use that to support the podcast and to support the podcast, basically keep the podcast going, pay our bills. Paul McDonald, our race car driver. Paul is a race car driver. Took a couple quick shots of his car going around the track very fast, it looks to me. It's got motion blur to
It's
it.
nice. I like it. The car's in focus and the background is whizzing by. It's a cool
I love
shot.
it. It is a cool shot, and if you look over the rear wheel well, hard to say when you don't have a cough drop in your mouth, you can see a little AV Rant logo back there, and there it is. And he says that he is having the announcer announce that he is the AV Rant podcast sponsored race car, which is just
Nice.
awesome, dude. I swear, Rob, if you ever get out there, you have to record that being said.
Okay.
Okay, you have to take a microphone or your phone or something. I prefer if you take a microphone so you can get a decent recording
Yeah,
of
I've
it.
got my
But
little Zoom recorder. That should capture.
yeah, so that we can, because I will totally use that sound effect on the podcast in some way. I might even get a mixing board. I might have AV Rank this a mixing board just so I can press it and have that say that with the announcer voice guy. All right, so that's
Nice.
You can go to facebook.com/AV Rant podcast, one word, and see those pictures of the AV Rant. Because Paul wanted to sponsor the podcast, but he's a race car driver and he dumps a lot of money in his car. So instead, he said, "Well, if I put a sticker of AV Rant on the car, would that be awesome?" I think he said, "Would that be all right?" I said, "That wouldn't be all right." I can't imagine anything cooler than that. It'd be very hard. I mean, you could tattoo it to yourself, and I would go, well, it's kind of weird. Race car was awesome. Luke just discovered AV Rant on iTunes. Yay! And he gave us a very enthusiastic compliment. Thanks, Luke. He said, and then for those of you what was the compliment? Was it on the?
It was on Facebook. He posted on Facebook on the actual thing there. He said he loved us. So,
yeah.
Love.
Okay.
Not us. The show. Yeah.
Oh, good.
We kind of go hand in hand. The show and us.
Doesn't really know me that well. I will say, if any of you guys are watching the stream or watching the video when it posts to YouTube, there was somebody last week who said I should grow back in my evil Tom goatee. I am doing that because after blowing my nose for 5 days straight, there's no way I'm going anywhere near my upper lip with a razor. It will come off again soon, just not until the skin regrows, because it has been brutal up there. So anyways, this is a good opportunity to mention that if you would like to support the podcast in ways that involve you not giving us money, go to iTunes or wherever you get the podcast, and leave a review. An honest review. You do not have to. I'm not asking you to go over there and say we're the best. No, just leave us an honest review, because if somebody reads an honest review, they can tell it's honest, and even if you say something negative, they'll go, well, that negative thing doesn't bother me as much as knowing that there's this podcast that will answer my question. So please go ahead and leave us a review at iTunes would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, and honestly, even just giving like a star rating, any of those things, they actually kind of boost up the visibility of the podcast. Like if somebody types in a search term like home theater or something, AV Rant will sort of rise up in the list of where it appears if there's more ratings and reviews. So that can totally help us out, and we'd appreciate it if anybody did so.
That would be great. Sammy sent us a picture or a link to a cable elevator or cable riser, depends on who you talk to. Now, for those of you that are sane and maybe are really into home theater and haven't searched for exotic cables or really expensive speakers or complete insanity in audio, then you won't know what a cable riser or a cable elevator are. There are people that believe that by lying on carpet, cables can absorb static electricity. That static electricity can get into the wires, and it can mess things up. So what they do is they take and they buy extremely expensive, well, extremely overpriced things that to take their cables and pick them up from the ground. And that will, in some way, they think, make the sound better. That is, of course, absolute nonsense. That cannot happen, cannot work. I mean, it absolutely works. Your cables do no longer touch the ground.
Oh.
But other than that, that's the only thing you've achieved. Well, this particular one is, I think, is brilliant. What they've done is they've taken a 2x4 and they've sliced it, and then they cut a V. They sliced it so that's about 4 inches off the end of a 2x4. And then they sliced a V in one of the sides, and then on the bottom, the other side from that V, they put two. It looks like I'm going to say copper, but it's probably brass or something.
It's almost certainly brass. Yeah. Yeah,
little outrigger-looking things. little, basically just round, oval-shaped, a post, and then there's screws that go through those to hold things off the ground because high-end cable manufacturers.
If you're going to have cable elevators, those cable elevators better have spikes, because we all know spikes make everything better. Yeah. So.
Spikes make everything sound better. That is the absolute truth. They've put a little bit of velvet, it looks like.
Anyone can't tell, that was sarcasm. The spikes they help physically stabilize things, but they also couple things to the floor, and normally we want to decouple things from the floor.
We're not going there because now you're getting into actual science, okay? This is Fantasyland. So they have spiked this little block of wood, which they have varnished. They've stained and varnished very nicely, I'll have to say. They put in the V. They put in a little bit of, could be Velcro, could be velvet. I don't know, some sort of fabric.
I think it's a little bit of carpet. So I mean, they've just defeated the entire purpose because they've put a little bit of carpet in their cable elevator to get the cables off the carpet. So
My favorite one that I ever saw of cable elevators looked just like those things that attach power cables to telephone poles. The poles, those little ceramic things that look just like that. I was like, I would actually use that. I would not think that it was doing anything, but I would think it was awfully cool because it was cool looking. But this literally looks like you put it together with about 3 to 5 cents worth of material and maybe an hour's worth of time.
That is still far too much money and time to be spending on a cable elevator. But
well, I just want to know how much this thing costs. Was there a link to it?
I don't think so. It was just an image. But Sammy did say that he thinks that it might actually make for a better gun rest for a rifle than a cable elevator. So that's the shape. If you don't actually go over to Facebook and see the image, that's what you're looking at.
Yes. All right. So. I guess it's a dual-purpose thing. It's a multitasker.
Oh, sure.
You could take it, and the spikes help stick it into the carcass of the dead animal. I don't know.
I don't think that's how.
I don't hunt.
Work, Tom.
I don't know.
Kind of be on the other end of from where you shot from.
Well, after you shoot one, don't you like use that one to prop up your gun to shoot the next one? You don't do that? I don't really know.
I don't believe so. No, that isn't usually how that works.
I hunt most of my game at the supermarket. So Andy over on Google Plus commented on our the soundstage depth conversation we had last week. He says that the frequency response of a speaker also plays a role in whether its sound seems to come from in front or behind the plane of the speakers. He says that a dip in the most critical Uh, ooh,
Part
most
of the
critical part
mid-range.
of
Yep.
the mid-range, about 500 hertz to 2K, or 2 kilohertz, tends to make it seem as though sounds are coming from further away, while a bump in that same region will make it seem as though the sounds are coming from a location that's closer to the listener. That would be true if those are the frequencies that are being played at the time, for sure. And I think a lot of voices come from around there too. So
Oh yeah. I mean, that is like the most critical area of human hearing, so it would make sense that we're paying attention to that, as especially reflections as well,
mm,
in that range particularly. So, I mean, yeah, that seems to make sense to me.
yeah, I really liked our discussion of the Haas effect last week. I thought that
That was
that
fun.
one that one kind of it's been sticking in the back of my mind. I've been thinking of ways I can use it to torture my children. Yeah, I'm thinking like Halloween, like putting a speaker, someplace off to the side, and then I don't know, just so that whatever. Hey, Jefferson bought an amp. He bought the Emotiva XPA2 amplifier. Wasn't he
Oh, it
the
was
one that said
actually
he?
it was the 200 XPA 200.
Oh,
That's a
200.
typo I put in the list there.
Look at that.
Hmm.
Not my fault. I got bad copy from my people, Rob.
Yeah.
Uh, anyways, the XPA 200. He was looking for $1,000 amp, right? And
Yeah, up to $1,000 for two channels. That's
and
what he was
we
willing to
we
spend.
sent him to that. And I think they spent what, like $400, $300, something like that. Is
Yeah,
that what
they're on
that is?
sale right now, so yeah, I think it's just a little over 400 for that one.
Yeah. So saved him $600. I thanked us for the recommendation, and he's really happy. He's really happy with it. So
Yeah,
now
we
he's
asked last week because he mentioned he got it, but he didn't say whether he actually liked it or not. So
yeah,
he's confirming he does, in fact, like it and will be
good.
keeping.
Yeah, he's also trying to get in touch with Dickinson, who we talked about last week as the person that he should talk to about matching his speakers perfectly, since that's the guy who designed them.
Hmm.
Paul B. and Efrain. Efrain had some comments on and recommendations regarding 7.1 music recordings. And this is what Paul was asking about last week. If you remember, Paul asked if there was any 7.1 specific no video music recordings Blu-ray. It doesn't have to be Blu-ray, I guess, but in order for it actually to be 7.1, it does have to be Blu-ray
Or a download.
or a download, right? Uh, Efrain made a very good point that there was never any 7.1 speaker placement standard developed for music playback, only the 5.1 speaker placement standard for SACD and DVD audio. So that might be part of why there's no 7.1 music, or very little 7.1. He did say to check out 2L, the Nordic sound. Okay. I clicked on that link. So the link is www.2l.no.
Hmm.
This is Norway or whatever. So the Nordic Sound. So they have a couple of Blu-ray music-only discs with 7.1 and even 9.1 Oro 3D mixes on them, which is interesting. Though I question whether or not they are actually whether or not they're actually recorded. Because what I think that Paul wants is he wants something that's recorded, that was designed, recorded in 7.1. And this, I mean, when you've got stereo and then 5.1 surround and 7.1 surround and 9.1 Oro 3D,
Hmm.
uh, I kind of wonder, I mean, is it just they just took like a two-channel recording and now they're
Hmm.
using the sound engineer to split it out? Well, that's fine, but I'm not sure that's what Paul wants. I think what he wants is something that was actually recorded in 5.1 or 7.1 in this case, which is something they do, but they don't do 7.1. They do 5.1.
Yeah, I mean the suggestion of Oro is a good one because I mean Oro can be recorded in up to 13.1, just as far as how many channels it can use. Usually they use 11 or 9, as are in these cases. But I mean, in order to play back anything that's recorded in Oro, you have to have the specific Oro 3D audio decoder, which is only available in a handful of processors, rather not even a handful. I think there's like two. out there
Yeah.
that you can actually buy for your home that actually have Oro 3D decoding. But I was saying, there's sort of this debate on the forums right now with Dolby Atmos, coming to the homes, and then Oro 3D is kind of a competing technology. Both of them making use of more speakers and putting sounds that are height or overhead. And I was sort of saying, well, I don't think Oro is really going to catch up at this point, either in the commercial movie theaters or in the homes. But one good use for it might be music, since they actually have the facilities to set up 9 or 11 or 13 actual microphones in the very spots where the speakers are supposed to be, and then you're getting a direct correlation between where the microphones were and where your speakers are playing it back. So I kind of like the idea of Oro for surround sound music, but yeah, we'll have to see if more releases ever hit the market.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, so that's that. Uh, there's just not a lot out there. Paul wrote to AIX Records,
Hmm.
which I am familiar with them. I've actually met them before. I don't know who I met over there, but I met somebody. The site owner replied directly and said that the Dolby demonstration disc is the only music they sell with 7.1 mixes. Everything else is 5.1. And in fact, I had talked to them at one point because I've reviewed some of their stuff. Um, and they really do set up like 5 mics and they record it,
Hmm.
so that you're getting exactly, uh, what you're supposed to be getting. So they're very good about that sort of stuff. Um, Efrain also linked us to a tutorial on how to rip just the audio from Blu-rays, since I mentioned that last week. So we can post that up on Facebook or in our website, and recommend that you not do it because I think it's illegal. But if you did, don't do
Yes,
that.
breaking the
But
copy
here's how.
protection in the United States is illegal thanks to that Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is one of the dumber laws that's ever been passed. But anyway, there it is.
We have lots of laws on the book. I don't think you should just single out that one for being dumb, because we got stuff that's about like run over armadillos and stuff. So let's not go ahead and throw it in as one of the dumber ones. It might not even scratch the surface of stupid. This is America. America. Uh, Cesar over on Facebook is updating us about his wireless subwoofer connection. A while back, he asked us about which one we thought he should go with. We gave him some recommendations. He had heard about the Rocketfish and wanted to try it. And the wireless subwoofer kit, it's available everywhere. But well, that's just the Best Buy one, right?
Rocketfish is one of their house brands. I mean, you can find it other places. I think Amazon still sells the Rocketfish one,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is Best Buy's own house
Yeah,
brand.
but you can get it through Amazon and other places. That's what I thought. He got it. It was pretty inconsistent for him. It occasionally dropped the signal while playing and occasionally losing the signal altogether after cycling the power. It required a full pairing cycle, which is a pain, especially if you live in Florida, whether or not you want to cycle your power, it gets cycled for
Right.
you fairly often. Um, so what he did is he ordered the episode wireless subwoofer kit from SnapAV. It's twice the price of the Rocketfish, so it's about 120 bucks. But Caesar says that it's totally worth it. It uses frequency shift keying, which is basically frequency hopping, so that it has the same sort of wireless RF signal as was used for live stage concerts. So it doesn't drop the signal while playing. It's never failed to sync back up within 2 seconds after cycling the power of his whole system. So he's very happy with it, and it sounds like a great recommendation for our other AV Rant listeners. So Snap AV, episode wireless. There you go.
Yeah,
Free
and it's a
publicity for you.
little bit cheaper than the Outlaw offering, which seems by everything I could find to have the best reviews as far as people saying it's very solid. And in fact, we have a listener coming up later on who is using the Outlaw version, but it's a little bit more expensive. So if the Snap AV one is a little bit cheaper and it works this well, why not?
Give it a go.
Hmm.
Damon, he's got a question about dehumidifiers, quiet dehumidifiers. He asked if we
Mm.
have any recommendations for quiet dehumidifiers, because with wood and electronic products in his basement, targeting temperature and humidity levels ought to be a priority, but Damon has never really seen it discussed as part of home theater hobby. Any ideas? Well, Rob and I were talking about this beforehand, and Rob, of course, has got this very technical thing that he's going to talk about. It's not that
Do I
technical.
now?
It's pretty good. But it never really. Oh, first of all, in my defense, I've never had the pleasure of living in some place that had basements. I would love to have a basement. I mean, I would love to have a basement. Uh, that whole idea of having a home theater that's like a room that people are like, oh yeah, that's just a like here. I like had to negotiate for a room that was kind of a throwaway room or a room that so I could put a home theater in it. Everybody's got basements. Like, oh, I don't know. We put boxes down there. I think he's got a pool table or something. Yeah, that was awesome. I think basements are cool. Apparently, they're also human. So, generally, where I've lived, I've always had AC, so AC dehumidifies anyways, and it never really has been an issue. Um, Over in Perth, the humidity wasn't a problem, but heat often was because they don't have central air there, and that became more of an issue for me. But when you got a projector going, you add in a couple electronics, and you turn on your Xbox, and pretty soon you're sticking to your couch because everything's so hot in there. But humidity was never really an issue. So, Rob, tell us how to fix humidity in a home theater.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as actual dehumidifiers that you could put in a room or install, sort of in your ceiling or in your wall bays that are actually quiet, like silent enough where you'd be fine with running them in your home theater, I've never ever come across such a thing.
Not only
I'm
that, I mean,
saying,
where I live, we do have a lot of dehumidifiers. A lot of places run these little air filters everywhere, and the quiet ones don't exist. Now, I take that I take that back. There are quiet ones that exist. They don't work. They're the ones that it's like, oh, it's passive, ionic, whatever. It's like,
oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's garbage.
That's why they're sold at Sharper Image and not an actual
That's
retail
right.
store. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just from my own experience, I know Mitsubishis tend to be on the quieter side, but they're by no means silent. I certainly wouldn't want one running while I'm playing a movie or music. So the only solution I really know of is to do what's called a dead vent. And a dead vent is just a fancy silent way of doing an air exchange between two rooms. So the idea would be you would have your home theater, and then you'd have an adjacent room, and you could put the dehumidifier or the AC or just the regular ventilation, have all of that pumping into the adjacent room, and then you just do an air exchange between that adjacent room and your theater, and you use this thing called a dead vent to move the air in and out of the home theater as silently as possible. And it is pretty silent. So all the plans are up over at soundproofingcompany.com. Which is a website I've mentioned before. They sell a lot of actual construction products, but they also have plans for and basically describe the ways to do that construction. So one of them is the dead vent. I'll put the link up at Facebook and at avrant.com in the show notes. And basically you're getting one of these fans that's very, very quiet, and you're using the practice of having a certain diameter of vent and then expanding that to a larger diameter and having the fan in there. So, I mean, it's working on the same principle that, like, any sort of silencer for any sort of air movement works on, which is increasing the diameter of the pipe that the thing is going through so that the same volume of air can go through, but not as quickly and making less noise. So it's just an air exchange, though. That's all it is, and it isn't really going to be a big help if you don't have an adjacent room where you can put all the noisy stuff on the other
That's
side
right.
of a big wall.
Yeah, you need to have that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's definitely some construction.
Right. It's not just buying something and shove it in your corner.
That's right, yeah.
Which, you might say, I don't know. I guess it depends on how much it's bothering you. If it's really bothering you, then, yeah, you're going to have to come up with something more like what you're talking about here.
If you're in danger of actually damaging any equipment or warping something that's made out of any kind of wood or something like that, then, yeah, this is a big priority.
Yeah, well, I've never been in a room that was that humid, and that's not, I mean, that's...
Can be, yeah.
They can be for sure, but I thought the whole idea of having a basement or something underground was that the humidity level stayed pretty relatively steady, and the heat levels, it was able to, tend to stay a little bit.
If you go down far enough, but some people are like, they're in the low part of their neighborhood, so all
Right.
the water pools around the foundation of their house, and it's basically just soaking there the whole time. You better hope you have a good weeping system and some very good waterproofing on the outside of your foundation.
Yeah, no
But
doubt.
people have that, and it floods all the time or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Well, let us know how it works out for you, Damon.
I hope that's of
John.
some little bit of help.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of those questions like, well, I don't have that problem, so I don't know.
Well, it's one of the ones where I don't have a solution. I can't. There's no way to go to Home Depot and say buy this brand of little portable dehumidifier and it'll work, because that just doesn't exist. At least not to my knowledge. If anyone out there knows of one that actually is silent, then
Yeah,
by
because
all
I've
means.
had like those Mitsubishis and like those wall
Yeah,
unit things. It's not like
yeah.
I'm not talking about like a window unit, but the one they have
No,
the little one that goes right near the top of your ceiling, and they
yeah,
have the
like the
big unit
ductless
outside.
system. Yeah,
And they are they're not loud,
right.
but they're certainly not quiet. I mean, I didn't like to turn them on when we were going to have a conversation, much
Mm,
less watch a movie. So yeah.
yep.
All right, John over on Facebook. He needs a 5.1 surround system for $1,000. He says that he and his wife agreed on a $1,000 budget for a 5.1 system. This is an AV receiver, 5 speakers, and a sub. His room is 13 by 18 by 8, and it's enclosed. Yes, thank you. All these
That
open
makes
rooms
life easier.
killing me. It's like, okay, I would like you to spend. He's like, I would like to spend $1,000. I'm like, really? Because your room's open to the entire world, so you need a subwoofer the size of a car. All right, so his room is 13 by 18 by 8, which I would call it's kind of borderline medium. Medium. 13 by 18. Yeah, medium. Call it medium. It's not large. Medium. He's pretty much settled on the Yamaha RX V375 and the Pioneer Andrew Jones Generation 2 speakers, with 4 of the bookshelf speakers plus the center. He's really having a tough time deciding on the sub, though. So how much money has he spent with that? Because I don't know how much those speakers cost.
Yeah, so he's looking at about $250 for that receiver, about $250 for both pairs of the bookshelf speakers, and then another 100 on top of that. So he spent about $600 so far, roughly.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on where he bought it, but we're in that ballpark. Between $500 and $600 is already spent if he
So he's
goes
got
with both
about
products.
$400 to $500 to spend on a sub.
Yeah.
All right, you go first.
Okay. To me, the choice is pretty easy. I would go with the HSU STF2. Physically, it's a little bit smaller. He was mentioning he's looking at, of course, SVS, since we've mentioned them so much. He's looking at like their PB1000, looking at Rhythmic's LV12R, which is physically a little bit larger, and it's more expensive. It's more towards $600, that one. And then he was considering, well, could he possibly get 2 subwoofers for that budget, in which case he's looking at like the BIC America ones, which I wouldn't really recommend in this case dipping down there. So for this size of room, which actually this fits within a small room, it's under 2,000 cubic feet, so this is technically a small room. The STF2, while it will not dip right down to below 20 hertz. I mean, it's a really nice subwoofer. It's very appropriate size-wise for this size of room. It's on sale right now for $330. There's about $45 of shipping on top of that. The thing I'm thinking here is this will definitely fit within his budget. That's for sure. And then if he's got, a couple $100 and another couple months extra on top, he could maybe get a second one, because this is closer to $300, for each one. So I'm kind of thinking maybe get a little wiggle room in there, because 2 STF2s in that room would work really, really nicely. That's my suggestion.
Right. Okay. Let me see if I can hear this right here. I want to see if the. Okay, I want to make sure I had this right. Okay, so here's my suggestion. And I want to check out this subwoofer here before I go too far, because the specifications on this I didn't check out beforehand.
Okay.
Subwoofer goes down to 32, which is probably about right. All right, if you're looking for small speakers, which he is, for $650 you can get the Cinema 5 compact home theater system from EMP Tech. We haven't talked a lot about that system because, frankly, I haven't heard it. But I've heard enough RBH speakers, who are the parent company of EMP Tech, to know that these speakers are going to be well worth more than $650. Now, the subwoofer is rated down to 32. I believe that subwoofer is one I have heard before. It's probably modified since the last iteration of this, and it's a good little sub. It's not going to be something that's going to knock your socks off. The speakers themselves are probably going to be alone worth the money. That leaves you, what, $350 to spend on whatever else, or $250 if you're worried about shipping, to spend on everything else. EMP right now has, I think their new deal is you have to pay return shipping if you change your mind. So you can order their speakers and Andrew Jones, but then you might be out the shipping, whatever it is. But since this is a small package, it might not be that bad. You have to see how much the shipping is. I know if you order that right now, you'll get free shipping to you. It's the shipping back that you'll have to worry about. They're small speakers, they're small bookshelves, single. I think the center's got two woofers and the MTM. The other ones are just little small speakers. They're going to be quality, $650. It's pretty much, going to be a really neat system for you. The subwoofer is not going to be something that you're going to be terribly. It's not going to crush your room, but it's certainly going to be something you're going to be happy with until you get a chance to upgrade your sub later on. At which point you're just going to take that sub and put it into a different situation, like an office or something like that. So you can start thinking about where's the next place I'm going to put this sub if you're going to start. This is a good starter system, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you can bring both sets of speakers into your house and you're fine with maybe being out the return shipping, I do like that idea because I haven't heard these particular EMP Tech speakers. I mean, I will definitely vouch for the Pioneer speakers that you're already considering because I really like those. I think for the money, they're really, really good speakers. So, I wouldn't jump all over the EMP Techs just on the name alone. This is one I would be very interested to hear the comparison, what somebody thinks of those. So, yeah, I can't say strongly one way or the other.
Right. I have literally, I've heard I've heard so many EMP and RBH speakers from their absolute entry level all the way up to their high end stuff to just, I have no problem. I have faith. Right. Alone that they're going to be good. So, yeah, John, let us know what you do. In this case, that $350 that you're planning on spending on that Yamaha RXV, is that $375? I think for $250 over on Accessories for Less, you can get an RXV $575. So you might want to check out Accessories for Less. Last week after the podcast, we talked about this before. After our recording sessions, 9 p.m. On Monday nights, we have a hangout, and one of our listeners came on looking for a receiver, and we all sat there and started making recommendations and looking around for prices, and we found, basically he was planning on spending upwards of $1,500. I think the receiver, I don't know if he ended up getting it, but the last one he was pretty much settled on was a Yami. I think it was $750. He's gonna save half the money that he had kind of tucked away for this thing. So go to Accessories for Less because that's where we find a lot of our best deals. It's B stock, or it is refurb, or it is clearance. It's last year's model. We need to get rid of these things. So.
Yep. But it is coming directly from the manufacturers, and the warranty is 1 year, and that is the manufacturer's warranty. So there's no, 90-day BS like you get with a lot of refurb products from less than reputable places where there isn't actually anybody backing the warranty that they try to sell you. This is legit. Accessories for Less is getting their stuff directly from the manufacturers. And John was saying, he's okay with suggestions for other speakers or other receivers. I'll just mention, at Accessories for Less, you could get a Denon AVR X1000 for, I think it's $220 or $230. That's getting you Odyssey Mult-EQ XT, which is their second from the highest level. Sometimes people ask why I'm so bullish on Odyssey over other room correction programs. It's not really so much the EQ. The reason I like Odyssey better than all the others is because of dynamic EQ. That's honestly the reason I like it the best, because none of the other systems have dynamic EQ, and dynamic EQ is the thing that lets you turn the volume down below reference volume, but it compensates for all the bass frequencies that you're supposed to be able to hear, that if you're playing your system at 65 decibels instead of 85 decibels, which is reference volume, there are some bass sounds that we just don't hear at 65 decibels. And it's not that we're not supposed to, it's just we're not really capable of hearing them once they get that quiet. So dynamic EQ keeps everything audible that's supposed to be audible. And honestly, that's my reason for preferring Odyssey over the others. And you'll only find it on Denon and Marantz products these days. So anyway, that's another option for sure. The only thing I'll warn you about the X1000, it has no component video inputs, and it does not convert analog video to HDMI out. So it's basically HDMI only as far as the video side goes.
That's what I was going to say. You got to worry. Those entry-level Denon products are just nothing but
that's
HDMI.
Not really entry level. That's their entry level for their in command.
That's their entry. Yeah, exactly. That's entry level for the in command. So you do have to take a look at the back, and don't just take a look at the connections and say, oh, it's got everything I need. Make sure that there's some up conversion that's going on there.
Yeah, they do have at Accessories for Less. They have the Denon E400. Which is like $10 more expensive. That drops you down to Odyssey Mult EQ. You don't get Mult EQ XT with that one, but if you really need a component video input that gets converted to HDMI output, the E400 has that. So there's another option.
Yeah, keep your eyes on all those. And those things sometimes, like a lot of them will say, well, buy it now, only a few left. They're not joking around. Sometimes that's exactly what they have. Is one left. Okay, so Steve. He's got a Denon AVR 4311, nice receiver, which has Odyssey Mult EQ XT 32 with sub EQ. Okay, and that's the one where he's got two different subwoofer outputs. Both the subwoofer outputs are independent, which means it's not just a mono one that they were nice enough to split for you inside the receiver, rather than you spending 15 cents to buy a splitter, or you do what I do, which is see it on the ground for like 3 years until you finally need it, and you go back to that spot and you go, damn it, where is it? And then you can't find it for another 3 years until you stop needing it anymore. So you buy one and go, okay, well, now that I bought one, there it is. Which is exactly what happens to me. Anyway, so that's what he's got. He's got a Denon AVR 4311 independent subwoofer outputs. He's got two rhythmic FV15P. I see the number 15 in there. That makes me think it's got 15-inch woofers. Is that true?
Yeah, this is their ported. The V stands for vented in the name. So this is their ported 15-inch high power, which means it's using their 600-watt amp. This is like the only subwoofer out there that is less expensive than SVS's Ultra Subs and can actually, at some frequencies, play even louder than SVS's Ultra Subs. So this is the one that people always throw up toe-to-toe with the SVS Ultra Subs, in case anyone is wondering. This would be a good option for that gigantic room that we had earlier, although it's kind of expensive, so probably not.
Yeah, I would imagine they are. All right, so he's got one at the front of the room and one at the back of the room. He's got two Outlaw Audio. Why does he have two? Okay, anyways, he's got two Outlaw Audio OAW3, the wireless connection kits. Okay, that's the one that we were just talking about. We got the Rocketfish, which didn't work so well. The SnapAV, which worked really well. It's a little bit cheaper than this Outlaw one, which apparently, by all reports, works excellently. Yeah. He'd like to know the best way of hooking up his two subwoofers. He's got the sub at the back of the room. He has to use the wireless kit. There's no way to run a cable back there. But the sub at the front of the room could be connected with a cable. So, how should he wire things? So his options are wireless kit to the back of the room with a wireless kit, because apparently he's got two of them, wireless kit to the front of the room as well. So he's going wireless both ways. Wireless to the back of the room or wired to the front of the room. Okay? Now,
he was also wondering, since we've talked about splitting subwoofer outputs before, and we talked specifically about the stereo subwoofer thing, where there's an actual separate left and right subwoofers, and how we were saying not to do that, and to use a summed subwoofer output if you're in that kind of situation. So he was just a little bit confused about what's the right way to go here.
Right, okay. So first of all, these are independent subwoofer outputs. Okay, this is what he's worried about. He's not saying it, at least it's not saying it right here. This is what he's worried about, and I think you guys can all understand this. The wired connection is going to be, quote-unquote, faster than the wireless connection. There's no transposing, no wireless sending or anything else. Now,
the wireless does have a little bit of latency to it.
And a little bit of lag. That's right. It's got a little bit of lag to it. So, and that's to be expected. So, should he just go ahead and make sure that both subs are wireless so that that lag is equal between both ones. Well, if this was a situation where he had one subwoofer output and he was splitting it mono, you could make the argument. I think you can make the argument that going wireless for both of them makes a little bit of sense.
Yep.
In this case, it does not, because think of it this way: Odyssey is going to calibrate both those subs separately, which means they're going to send a test tone through one and go, okay, that sub is right there. It's wired over here, and I can hear it, and this is how long the sound takes to get to the microphone. Therefore, this is the distance, and that's how I calculate everything. Now, the sub at the back of the room, that sound is going to be a little bit delayed. Well, the microphone is going to pick that up as a little bit of a delay, and Odyssey is going to correct for that. It's going to correct for the latency in the wireless system. Okay? Therefore, you can just run it exactly the way you said. Send back one of those OAW3s if you can, or sell it, or whatever. You can, or keep it in case the other one breaks. Wire the front sub, and the back sub you can just go ahead and use the wireless one, and Odyssey will correct for all that.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about, subwoofer phase matching and that in recent weeks, and this is one of the reasons why I really like Odyssey Multi-EQ XT32 with sub EQ HT. You have to look for that sub EQ HT part of it, because that is the part that gives you the dual independent subwoofer setup. And Odyssey does this, in my opinion, in the right way, which is that it sets the distance and levels for those two subwoofers independently, so there's no problem using the wire to connect the one at the front of the room and the wireless system to connect the one at the back of the room. That will work out well. But then it does send the same actual frequencies, the same actual music or sounds, to both subs in mono after it's done the distance and levels independently, and it EQs them as one. It EQs them as one subwoofer, which is the way it should be done, because the whole idea is you have two subwoofers, but they're both playing the same thing at the same time. So this is the perfect application of sub EQ HT. Use both subwoofer outputs, wire the front one, use the wireless to the back one, and you're good in this. But for people who do not have sub EQ HT, then I actually think he has a point of using either just one wireless transmitter to feed both wireless receivers so that they both get the same amount of lag, or using two separate wireless systems if that's the way you have to do it. But yeah, hopefully that makes it a little clearer.
Yeah, and like you were saying before, if when you're setting your subwoofers up, you don't want to set them up in front back or left right. You want to set them up as summed.
Right.
So for both those outputs. Number two, the stupid name for that thing. Anyways, the wireless sub thing from Outlaw lists the operating frequency range at 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz in the specifications. Should you be concerned that might be cutting off all information below 20 hertz? Or is that all just kind of, what is that? What is that operating frequency range? Well, I thought that was an excellent question. And if I had seen it early enough, I would have called somebody over at Outlaw to make sure. But, I would feel pretty confident that what they're really saying with that 20 to 20, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, it's just, we got it all, dude. We can send it all. I don't think that I would doubt that they would have a hard filter at 20 hertz that's cutting off anything below 20 hertz. It just wouldn't make sense to me.
Yeah, this is, I'm not 100% sure on this either, but what you'll see sometimes is you'll see wireless connection systems that are meant to be used for any speaker. It might be your subwoofer, but it might be just a regular speaker as well. And then you'll see some that are specifically only for subwoofers. And some of the ones that are only for subwoofers will actually have a low-pass filter. Like, they won't send anything above 200 hertz. They'll have a filter in there so that they're not sending any higher frequencies, because higher frequencies are the ones that tend to pick up more interference when you're using a wireless signal. The lower frequencies tend to not pick up as much interference. So what they're basically saying from Outlaw here is, no, we're sending a full range signal. So you could use this device even with a regular speaker. It doesn't have to be only for a subwoofer. It seems highly unlikely to me that they're putting in a brick wall filter on the low end, because there's really no technical reason to do that. There's no interference you have to worry about down there.
Yeah, I agree. All right, there you go. Yay. feel like we're flying through this thing. How long has it
Are
been?
we now?
Oh, it's been less than an hour. How many more questions? Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. All right. Sorry, I'm depressed
Yeah,
now.
there you go.
All right. Cameron. Cameron over on Facebook wants a portable DAC. Apparently, he's got some money. He's got some money in his pocket. It's burning a hole. Can't wait to spend it.
Or he just
I,
has a noisy laptop. That might also be the
ugh,
case.
God, I hate noisy laptops. I really do. You know, nothing irks me more than that. When you plug your headphones into your laptop and you hear
Hmm. Which is all too common.
yeah, I'm sorry. I do not actually have to hear the hard drive spin in order to be sure that it's happening. Just you could go ahead and deaden that bad boy. God, it's so irritating. Anyways, Cameron wants a portable DAC. He says that AudioQuest, by the way, on general principle, AudioQuest and I do not get along. That's because of their high-end cables. That
Mm.
because they are a high-end cable manufacturer. They are they not? Right?
Um,
Am I thinking of somebody else?
I'm not even 100% sure on that. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna
There's so
click.
many of those brand names that have audio in them.
Yeah,
Or
I know. Analog interconnects. Hold on, I'm gonna look at it.
okay.
Oh yeah, when you've got ones called Tower,
Mm.
Evergreen, Big Sur, Water, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Nice.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna make myself choke. Yeah, uh, I can't even order anything, and it's only through dealers. So yeah,
Mm.
okay, that's them. Anyhow, anywho, they have what's called a Dragonfly USB DAC. It's a USB DAC, preamp, and headphone amp.
Yeah.
Okay. It's available over at Amazon for just under $150 when I
Hmm.
checked this a little while ago. And he's curious. It seems to be that's the one that everybody's recommending. I'd like to know if we have any suggestions on top of that.
Yeah, so just to describe the Dragonfly a little bit, it really just looks like a little USB stick. Or let's say a large USB stick if you were talking about, a memory USB thumb drive. It's kind of like a fat one of those. But it's really quite a small device, and it's just a USB connection on one end, plugs into your computer in a USB port, and then it is a regular headphone jack on the other end. And that's all there is to it. The volume is still controlled by the computer itself using the regular controls inside, but it's just sending out a digital audio signal through the USB port. It can do up to 24-bit 96 kilohertz sampling, so it can do high-resolution audio if you're worried about that. And by and large, people say it sounds very good. One of the key factors to it that separates it from some of the little bit older units. Like I remember the Audio Engine, which I like that brand in general, especially for their self-powered speakers that they sell, which are really good for the price. But Audio Engine has a very similar looking little USB stick called the D3 that does very similar things. One of the things is in the specifications is the output impedance. The output impedance of the device you want to be very, very low, if at all possible. Ideally, it would be about 10 times lower than the impedance of the headphones that you're connecting to it. So the Dragonfly has a really low output impedance, it's about 0.5 ohms. So basically, any headphone you connect to it, you'll have a good impedance match, whereas the Audio Engine D3 has an output impedance of about 10 ohms. So it would work better, it's better impedance matched with higher impedance headphones. So that's one of the reasons why people are really liking the Dragonfly. Nice form factor, easy to use, but kind of limited. You can pretty much only use it with a computer.
Yeah, I'm looking right now at the one I was about to recommend, and
Hmm.
I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to say anything wrong here.
Well,
But
shall I just
yeah,
spit
continue
out the
on.
things I was going to say? Sure.
Yep.
So here's the thing. If the only thing you're worried about is connecting it to your laptop or your computer, I don't really know that I could point you to anything that I would consider better or for less money than the Dragonfly, at least by all accounts. I mean, I don't have any really first-hand experience with it, so I'm trying to put the pieces together from reviews and specs and that. But by all accounts, it is very good. And yeah, money price-wise, I don't think you're going to do a whole lot better. So if that's what you're wanting, then by all means. My one concern is when you're saying you want a portable DAC and headphone amplifier, maybe you want to also connect it to your iPad or to some other tablet or to your smartphone. and this won't really work for that. Some people have been able to use a regular USB to micro USB plug converter, and some Android phones will work with it, but it's really hit and miss. So a couple of ones that I can suggest. There's a pretty nice company called FiO. They're a Chinese company that has come onto the scene and made a name for themselves by selling nice, high quality, nice industrial design, very relatively inexpensive portable headphone DACs and amplifiers. So they have a fairly new one called the E18. It actually uses this new format called USB on the go, which is part of smartphones that are coming out now. In particular, like I know the HTC One and the HTC One M8 definitely support USB on the go. So in terms of Android, the FiO E18 is a good one that you could use there. It goes for about $160, so it's not really much more expensive. And the thing I really like about it is that it has a battery. It has its own battery built in, so you're not sucking any power from whatever device you're plugging it into in order to use it as a headphone amplifier. And in fact, it can even charge your phone as an emergency battery. So I kind of like that idea there for that price. That might be a good option. The other one, if you are an iPhone user, is called the HRT. That's the brand Micro Streamer. It goes for about $200. Some folks like it a little bit better sound-wise than the Dragonflies. Some people don't. And I have to say, I am personally quite skeptical when it comes to the whole describing DACs and headphone amps sounding largely different from each other. The amplifier part definitely can sound different, especially if they have those different output impedances or different frequency responses. The DACs, not so much. The people who are saying that DACs sound a lot different from each other, not so much. They usually attach to amps, and that's where any differences in sounds are coming from, in my opinion. But anyway, the Micro Streamer is kind of cool because it will actually work with iPhones. You have to get an adapter cable, because of course iPhones only have either the lightning port or if it's an older one of those 30-pin cables. So you have to get an adapter that turns that into regular USB. You're looking for the camera connection kit if you're going that route. So they do have those, and the HRT will work with that. It will also work with pretty much any USB device, including almost any Android phone. It doesn't have to be USB on the go. The downside of the HRT Micro Streamer is that it sucks power from whatever you connect it to. So it will drain your iPhone's battery quite a bit quicker than just using the iPhone by itself. But at least it gives you an option if you're really desperate for a different DAC and amplifier than what's built into your phone. So those are my two suggestions.
All right, I'm going to go a little different. I have my headphones back. Okay, I couldn't put my mic back on yet. All right, I've been coughing like crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Cambridge Audio DAC Magic XS is a small aluminum box. It is a portable USB DAC. It has a little USB cable that goes along with it. The difference between this and the one he's looking at, I think it uses the same DACs. It doesn't say, AudioQuest doesn't say which, which Saber, ESS Saber chip they use. But the Cambridge Audio uses, I think I scrolled past it. I might have to go back up to find it. But yeah, it uses a Saber ESS 9023 DAC. That's what it uses. Now, this might be even more powerful because this one supports up to 24192, so 24-bit 192 kilohertz files. You have to do that through USB 2.0, and it's not capable through USB 1.0, or I guess whatever 1.1 if there's. I think there's that too. Anyways, the things that I like about it are, first of all, there's a volume control on it. It takes the volume control out of your computer and it puts it right on the little device. That makes it a lot more usable later on down the line if you decide to use it with self-powered speakers or something like that. You can you can use it that way, and you have the volume right there. It's got a higher resolution. It's a little bit more expensive. I think that I don't like the ones that plug directly into your USB port and then you plug your headphone directly into the device, because how many times have you ripped your headphones out of the headphone jack, right?
Well, they do have the little pigtail extension cable if you're really worried about that. But then
and that's what this has. Yeah. This has a little pigtail extension cable that because it goes from I think USB, whatever the micro USB is,
Right.
uh, into the thing. I like this. I like this product. I use it myself. Uh, next to my computer or whatever.
Mhm.
It just sits right there. It's really kind of convenient. Um, I'm a fan. It's asynchronous as well, so it's a little bit more money. I think it's only for 189 on Amazon. You might be able to get it for less someplace else. I don't know. So it's a little bit more money, but it does do higher resolution, and I can't believe that the DACs are any worse than whatever the Dragonfly has in it. I mean, they're using the same company, so yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I'm a little bit sad that, we're still in the stage where headphone DACs and amplifiers still have so much just, mystery and misinformation and silly stuff spread about them because it's kind of like the last bastion of, not having to actually measure or prove anything and being able to charge ridiculous prices sometimes for what amounts to the exact same performance and people swearing up and down that they hear the difference, which of course they do. So, I mean, I don't like that side of it, but I do have to say, I mean, like listening to the headphone output straight out of your laptop, there is no question that there is very often a lot of noise coming out of that thing, and using a separate DAC and amplifier can absolutely clean that up. So this is one case where, separate DACs, like some people want to use completely separate DACs for their stereo system. They don't want to use the ones that are built into their AV receiver because they're still believing, that will make a difference. In those cases, I'm like, no, the DACs in your AV receiver sound every bit as good as any external DAC ever will. But in this case, for a laptop or for your smartphone, they can definitely make an improvement. So I'm okay with them in that case.
Rotel is selling a processor thingy that
Mm-hmm.
has the power supply in a completely separate box.
Right.
Why? Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, but it does to somebody. All right, John. Let us know which deck, but before Cameron, let us know which deck you go with and how you like it. I'm sure having some noise coming out of your headphone jack is annoying. I understand that,
Mm-hmm.
but I agree with Rob. The DACs today are a mature technology. This is not something that you worry about in a quality piece of equipment. If you're buying an AV receiver at almost any level, it's fine. What you've got in there is fine. Okay? Really. All right. John S. has some follow-up questions, or some follow-up stuff. So he wrote us previously looking for some wiring advice. Sounds not at all familiar. And bookshelf and in-ceiling speaker suggestions for his large, open concept room. That narrows it down. We recommended Kef. Yeah, we recommend it. We've done that before. Backer boxes and the loudest subwoofer he could accommodate. Remember those rhythmic ones we were just talking about? You need a couple of those. First, some updates. He found a Kef retailer and listened to their LS50 and Q series speakers in the store. He really liked their sound, so it seemed like we'd make a good recommendation for him. He also heard their Blade flagship speakers, and he figures that now he knows what a real speaker should sound like. Okay, they're very Bladey. He got in touch with Kef and got the dimensions on their backer boxes. He made them for himself out of plywood and cement board and silicone caulk. That's not going anywhere. Someday somebody's going to buy your house and decide to remodel something and then knock out that wall and look at that backer box. Go, what was going on? My parents their remodel finally started and they're starting to tear out walls and you hear the wall, you look around, you go, what the heck would they think? It's just so easy. All right. Anyways, and he had I remember this guy. This is the guy where he had two possible locations for a
He does.
subwoofer, and we said run the cable to both of them because you know what? Yeah,
Yep.
so he did that. So number one, the in-ceiling surround speakers are going to be about 8 feet away from the sweet spot. He knows that the Kef in-ceiling speakers had excellent off-axis dispersion when he heard them in the store demo, but he's wondering if he should look into in-ceiling speakers that can be aimed. The Kef in-ceiling speakers cannot be aimed. 8 feet, I don't think I'd worry about it.
I would not worry about it in the least. They're up in your ceiling. They're supposed to sound diffuse. They're supposed to sound, these are your surround speakers, so the sound is supposed to come from over that away. It's not supposed to be like super discrete, pinpoint accurate. That's not what the surround channels are meant to reproduce. The KEF in-ceiling speakers do have really good off-axis dispersion, so I would say stick with those because they will timbre match with the KEF front speakers that it sounds like he'll be happy enough to have in his house, the ones that we recommended. So yeah, I would say not to worry. I'm not a big fan of the ones that have the separately aimable tweeters. I am more of a fan of having the dispersion of the tweeter and the mid-range be even, as they are supposed to be. So I know Tom thinks differently on that, but we both agree you don't really need aimable in-ceiling speakers for your surrounds.
No, I don't mind having an aimable tweeter. I think you can fine-tune it a little bit that way, but it's not something that's going to be a make or break. I would not buy a speaker, an in-ceiling speaker on most speakers simply because it had aimable tweeters. I would buy the one that sounded the best before I get worried about that. Second law, he's trying to decide on a subwoofer. He's leaning towards the SVS PB2000. Of course he is. But Rob recommended the HSU VTF 15H.
I did mention it. He's got the room size that could make use of its prodigious output capabilities.
Okay, so yeah, that 15 is like a monster, right? Isn't that the one that can like silence elephants? Like it scares elephants that are trumpeting and running.
You mentioned once long ago whether any subs had actually earned an Audioholic's extreme room size rating. There are a handful of them. That Rhythmic FV 15 HP that we mentioned earlier, that's one. The SVS Ultra series subwoofers, that's another one. And this HSU VTF 15H is one that got the extreme rating. So in terms of just sheer loudness of output, it is about the least expensive one that can hit those kinds of levels, and he has that kind of room size, being this large open concept thing. So that's why I recommended it. It is definitely physically a little bit larger than the PB2000, although the PB2000 is a very large subwoofer.
Let's make sure we're all building cardboard boxes of these things before we start buying stuff based on our recommendations, okay? Because I, as an AV professional, I'm air quoting that because sometimes I don't feel as professional as I should. When I opened that box for the PB2000, I went, damn, that's a big sub. And I should have known how big it was. I saw the pictures. I know how big that driver was. I've had SVS subs. I've been around them. I know how big they can get. I was still surprised. It's a bit of a beast.
Yeah,
so
that's the VTF 15H is even bigger. It's about 4 inches bigger in every dimension, except for the width. It's only like 2 inches wider than the PB2000. But yeah, it is extremely huge. So I could see maybe not wanting to have it, and it's about $80 more expensive plus shipping on top of that. So yeah, I can see.
So top recommendation, is that still your top recommendation? I mean, is this a cost of no object thing or what?
I mean, cost is a factor. I mean, obviously he's willing to spend good money, but doesn't want to go. I mean, if you could throw a PC13 Ultra cylinder sub in there, he says the cylinder sub form factor wise would be okay, but now you're up to $1,600. So you've pretty much doubled the price of the one that he's looking at for a single, PB or PC13 Ultra in the cylinder form factor. So, he's not looking to spend that much. Like I say, if it's mainly the size thing that's keeping you away from the VTF 15H, then I understand that. I think the PB2000, it will play fine. I mean, the really nice thing about SVS subwoofers is that you can drive them up to as loud as they can possibly play, and then they will simply refuse to play any louder. They'll never bottom out. They'll never even produce really, really horrible distortion or anything like that. They're very well protected, and they have a digital signal processor that prevents them from overdriving themselves. So you can crank that PB2000 up as loud as it'll go. You'll probably never, ever come close to wanting to actually play it that loud, despite the size of your room. Most people just don't want it that loud. So I think you'll be fine with that one. I think that's a fine choice.
All right, then. I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the price here, and it's, even with the real wood veneers, it's less than $1,000. I mean, it's $1 less, but it's still less than $1,000, and that's that is a ridiculous amount of output. What is it saying here? Is it saying like 102, 103 dB?
Yeah, right down at down
You
to
know,
20.
yeah, that's ridiculous.
And then like another 8 or 9 decibels above that in like the 40 hertz, 50 hertz range.
Yeah,
So,
you're gonna
yeah.
hurt something there, buddy. Get a couple of those bad boys and let us know whether or not you still have Windows. That's the question I will have for you. All right. Yep. So that's it. I think I mentioned this in the podcast before, but it deserves to be repeated. I was on the phone with Gene one day, and I started talking to him about subwoofers. I'm like, listen, I'm tired of talking about HSU, rhythmic. We don't really talk about rhythmic that much, but there are those rhythmic subs that Rob was mentioning that are quite expensive, though. And SVS, these are the three brands we talk about all the time, but it's really hard for me to recommend anybody else. He's like, yeah, the new Paradigm ones or the Martin Logan ones are pretty nice, but they're expensive. And
Mm-hmm.
the JL Audios are good, but they're expensive. Basically, everything that he could come up with, that he and I could come up with together, we would all say, yeah, that's a pretty good sub, but it's expensive. But it's expensive. So we're like, it's really hard for us to get away from these three companies, or really two companies.
You could throw Outlaw in there, but
I was going to say,
they're pretty much HSU. So.
yeah, they just rebranded an HSU, which everybody agrees that that's what's going on. So it's not like it's a big secret, which is fine. And it's just hard to get away from these companies because they've done what they've done for long enough that they can keep doing it and selling it for so cheap, and they're not going to stop. They're just not going to stop. And even though SBS seems to want to get into the dedicated stores, the brick and mortar stores, they're trying to get in there. A lot of the brick and mortar guys are like, why would I let people come over here and demo my stuff and then order it from you directly? No, we'll see. They're cheap and they're good. It's hard. As long as they keep being cheap and good, I'm going to keep talking about them. Dan has a 10-foot wide, 12-foot long, 9-foot high room. That's small. With a dedicated 2-channel setup with 2 subwoofers. Yeah. His speaker's about 12 feet away from the front wall.
Inches.
Inches. Oh, I'm
12
sorry.
inches away. Yeah, 12 feet away.
I was gonna say he's already in the corner. Basically, they're 12 feet away from the front wall, which means they're on the back wall. Just wait, what? 12 inches away from the front wall, and the seat is about 12 inches away from the back wall, and the subs are diagonally opposite corners. He'd like to start using some acoustic room treatments, but his side walls have a bank of windows with shades over them on one side and a closet with wood door on the other. He's already ordered two 2-foot by 4-foot by 2-inch thick panels from ATS Acoustics. He'd like to know the best places to put them, keeping in mind that he can't hang them on the side walls at the first reflection points. So, what are our recommendations here? Well, these things aren't particularly heavy. My first suggestion is just put them everywhere until you find the places you like them best, including those first reflection points that you quote unquote can't put them at right now. The places I often recommend for placing room treatments are first reflection points. I know that Dr. Toole is now saying that those first reflection points are a little bit more important than we initially thought, but my ears say that however important they may end up being, it's more important to dampen them a little bit than it is to let them just bounce. So I put them at the first reflection points first, and then it's either, usually both if possible, the front wall right behind the speakers and the back wall right behind me, or right kind of where the speakers are firing into, just to catch those reflections. Those are sort of the 6 places I start, and those are the 6 places I think you should start.
Yeah, that's sort of exactly what he's asking, though, because he's saying, all right, he knows the first reflection points would probably be the first choice, and I do have to say, you can get stands. I know Gick Acoustics, they sell stands specifically to hold up acoustic panels, so you could get stands, and you could put them in front of your closet and in front of your windows, and then move them when you need to open the closet or need to open the window, if that happens to be where the window opens. So that is one possibility, but In this case, I would probably favor, if he's looking, then he says, okay, I just want to hang these on the wall and forget about them. Because he's only 12 inches away from the back wall behind him, myself, I would favor putting them on the back wall behind the listener, because you are almost certainly getting some rather strong reflection off of that back wall that's bouncing off and coming back at your ears from behind your head, and you're close enough to that wall that that reflection is going to be pretty strong, and you might even have some slap echo coming from back there. So I totally agree with what Tom says, and those are all the places to treat. But if you only have these two panels and this is your setup, I would suggest putting them behind you first.
It's just so, well, it's just so easy to test, though. I mean,
Right.
he's only 12 inches off the couch. Just stick, off the back wall. Just stick him back there, and
Yeah,
just
lean
actually
them
just
off the
like
top of
prop
you.
him up on the couch,
Yeah, lean
and
against
just
the
see
wall,
if it
yeah.
makes a difference. Hold him up behind your head, see if it makes a difference, you know. It shouldn't. It should be. It's not like it's going to take a while to break in. God help us if somebody decides that their acoustic panels have break-in periods.
You have to wait for them to absorb enough sound that they heat up to room temperature. Yeah.
Oh.
That somebody's gonna say it, man. You know, somebody's gonna say
The,
it.
the fiberglass fibers realign
Yeah, yeah.
as the
You gotta
sound
play
goes
them. You
through.
gotta play them constantly for 2 days so they absorb enough sound to equal out.
Somebody is taking notes and starting a company as we speak. I'm sorry. That's
Acoustic
a thing
panel
that's
breaking.
happening.
Oh man, yes, we make ourselves laugh sometimes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Rob. I think behind your head's probably where you're going to find the most. But it might not. Maybe that you're getting an echo like right off the back of that wall, the front wall that's coming and it's messing up your sound stage. So sitting them right behind your what kind? Did he say what speakers he's got?
Oh gosh, if you did, I didn't remember to put it in there. So
Oh, well, anyways. So let's think of it. He's 12 inches off the wall. What if he's got, like three rear ports that are firing right into the
Right.
wall?
Yeah.
Could be that putting those acoustic panels behind those speakers might make a bigger difference. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying in this case, you could right behind the speakers, right behind your seated position, the two places you want to try right away. And I think Rob's right, man. Try to get some stands, or just prop them up there and see what happens.
Put them on some chairs.
Yeah, just see what happens. All right. Jason
Yes.
has got a question about recommended maximum power for speakers. Bought an Emotiva UPA 200 when they were on sale. Yay! It's rated that it's a 2-channel amp, obviously, because it says 2 in their subplace. It's rated at 125 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 200 watts per channel into 4 ohms. Okay. He wants to use the amp to power a pair of outdoor speakers in Zone 2, but the speakers he's considering have recommended maximum power ratings that are below 125 watts. He's mostly looking at Yamaha and Polk's outdoor speakers, so should he be concerned about the amp pushing either of those speakers beyond the physical limits? Short answer, no. Okay. Long answer. You're never going to get anywhere near the recommended maximum power. It's just not a thing you're going to get near at any point, no matter how loud you think you're going to play those things. It's just not something you're gonna reach. You worry about this is what you're worried about with amplifiers. You're worrying about some mismatch between the speaker and the amplifier, so that the speaker is pulling too much power from the amp, sends the amp into some sort of oscillation, or it starts clipping. That clipping will cause damage to your speaker. Okay. Second thing you're worried about is underpowered, which is the exact same thing. If you got an amp that's underpowered, your speaker's will be pulling more power than it can. The amp starts to clip, and now your speaker's damaged. You cannot have too big of an amp for a speaker. It does not exist. It is not. It is not like you turn the amp on and it goes.
Right.
And it just pushes 125 watts of power and says, "Take it, speaker, take it." And the speaker goes, "Oh, I can't take it." And then
I mean, it is
on fire.
technically possible for a speaker to fail before the amplifier if you have a tremendous amount of amplifier power available and the speaker just keeps playing louder and louder and louder until it overheats and it melts its voice coil. That is possible, but an amplifier is not pushing power into a speaker. What's happening is the voltage is the signal, and the signal is going back and forth. So it's coming out of the red lead, going down the wire, through the speaker, and back up the black lead, back into the amplifier, and then it goes out the black lead, down that cable, through the speaker, and back up the red amp. It's an alternating current. It's an alternating signal. It's going back and forth. Pushing and pulling back and forth, and that's what's making the speaker driver want to move in and out. So what's happening is the voltage is creating a difference in potential. That's all it is. It's saying, hey, there's a lot of potential over on this side, so why don't all you electrons flow that way? And then it says, now the potential's over on the other side. Why don't all you electrons flow back the other direction? So it's a difference in potential, which is why we say it's more like the current is being sucked through the speaker than pushed. The electrons want to go where? From a position of high potential to low potential. So that's all it is. You don't have to worry about an amplifier blowing up your speaker by having too much power. You have to worry about it damaging the speaker by not having enough.
Yeah, I honestly don't even know why they put that rating on there. It does nothing but cause me headaches.
Yeah.
I just have no idea. I feel like I have to do it because of some government agency.
I mean, they should have a recommended minimum power. That should be there. That's a good thing to have. But yeah, maximum power.
But it would be something ridiculously low, though, wouldn't it? It would be
right. Yeah. Well,
2. Yeah, I mean, and everybody go, "Oh yeah, I got a 500-watt amp." I'm like, "Yeah, but it can't put 2 watts into this particular speaker, and then we're back in the same place." Anyways.
Anyway, your speakers will be perfectly fine, and if I have anything to say about it, I'd suggest getting the Yamaha outdoor speakers over the Polks. That would be my opinion. I would prefer the Yamahas, but that's just one man speaking.
My parents had Yamaha speakers. I bought them for Christmas one year, and they were very good. I was very happy. Outdoor speakers. I was at a guy's house this week. Oh, God. So, last World Cup game was on this weekend, and I got invited over to this family's house. My family got invited over to their house. The kids were playing on some water slide or whatever, and we were watching the game on his back porch in Florida in frickin' July. Let's just say it was warm, and he's got this TV, and it's like 32 inches, and we were talking about glare. Yeah, putting a TV on a porch across from like the Tampa Bay, so there's reflections coming off from the sun, reflections coming off from the water, reflections coming off from the water slide, reflections from everything. Yeah, there were some glare issues, right? I'm sitting there watching it with my polarized sunglasses on because it reduced the glare just a little bit. Like, I can't see this well because it's darker, but at least the glare isn't quite so bad. Yeah, in that case, Gary, you and I agree we should have Matt. But I still think that the mat would have probably had some glare issues anyways. It was awful to watch it out there. But you know, the people were nice, and the time was nice. It was just a ridiculously small TV, but he had Yamaha speakers. He had 3. I don't know how he got 3, but they were massive. They were like 2.5 feet across and like 1.5 feet high, and they were kind of rounded or whatever. They were loud. They sounded pretty good. So I'm going to go with the Yamaha 2 on that one. Matthew wants to know how to handle adding 2 more subwoofers to the 2 he already has. He has 2 subs. He wants 2 more. This is actually going to be a question he's not going to like my answer to. He's got a pair of Martin Logan Dynamo 500 subs. He's planning on getting a pair of SVS SB 2000s. Those are the sealed ones. He's wondering whether it would be a good idea or not to try running all 4 of them together. Yes, it's a good idea. He notes that the Dynamo 500 subs seem to roll off pretty steeply below 35 hertz or so. It's only going to be a good idea for a short period of time. If he uses all 4 together, should he put 1 subwoofer in each corner? Now, he's been finding that the best placement for 2 subs is he first finds the flattest response for his seat for one subwoofer. I said supper. That was weird. 1 subwoofer, and then he does the subwoofer crawl for the second one, while the first one is already positioned and playing bass sweeps at the same time. Should he continue this practice and try to place all 4 subwoofers, or should he just follow the suggested placements from Harman? This is interesting. Okay, so generally speaking, what we say is you don't really have to do the subwoofer crawl if you're using 2 subs. Mid wall, front and back, mid wall, side to side. And if you can't do that, put them in the opposing corners. If you can't do that, and something similar to that, something with a mirrored effect sort of thing. And you don't have to do the crawl. Well, he did a crawl, and this was worked for him, which I think is fantastic. I wouldn't have done that. In fact, I won't do that in this this very idea that I'm thinking right now, because I ain't got the time. I mean, I probably
Well,
should have the time, but I don't have the time. I don't
yeah,
have the time for the
the main reason I wouldn't do it that way is because it's only effective for that one seat. Now, I mean, if that's the only seat in your theater that you care about, okay. But I want to have more than one subwoofer because I want all three of my seats, or if I ever have more than three seats in a theater, I want all of them to have as even and uniform bass as possible. So the subwoofer crawl wouldn't really be terribly effective for hitting multiple seats. So
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's all that worried about that. So I say
yeah.
go for it. I say you place one sub, and then start playing some sweeps and find the next place for the sub, and then calibrate, recalibrate, start playing sweeps for those two subs, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. Okay, until you get all four subs placed, and then after you've gone through all that work and all that hassle, something I absolutely am not willing to do myself. I think at that point, what you should do is listen to something for a long time, get really, really familiar with how the bass sounds, and then take all those subs and put them in the four corners and tell me if it made a difference. Because if you come back afterwards and go, it sounded about the same, or it was a little bit better with this, with the crawling all over the place and the placing of subwoofers, yeah, I'm gonna feel justified in that and just telling people to shove them in the corner. So you could be our our guinea pig. Okay. Now that being said, I think that you should spend some time with your Martin Logans. I think you should do that now. I think you should prepare them for their upcoming journey to new homes that they will. Because I'm sorry. Break the news to him softly. Kind of hint at it for a while. Suggest that maybe that that it's time for them to go out on their own, see the world, maybe find a new daddy and mama to go. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to get those SVSs in there, and they're going to crush those Martin Logans. And at some point, you're just going to go, well, it's just pointless to have these two guys in here anymore. And that's what's going to end up happening, I think. I think you're going to end up finding that that real low bass is where you really need to have four subs playing all at the same time, if this is what you're going for. And those two Martin Logans would be better, I think, utilized in helping to pay for the two SVSs that you're about to get. You may not agree with me when you get them. So hey, do it as you see fit. But if you're finding that they're rolling off pretty sleekly after 35, you're going to be absolutely appalled at how much more bass you're going to get out of those SVS subs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're dead set on using O4, and I totally agree. By all means, if you're willing to put in the time and the physical effort, try it. I completely agree with that. But I would certainly suggest, if you're doing all four corners, that you would have the two SVS subs in diagonally opposite corners from each other, and the two Martin Logan subs in the other diagonally opposite corners. I wouldn't have the two Martin Logans in the front corners and the two SVS in the back, or vice versa.
You'll end up with
like
some
that.
sort of like West Side Story subwoofer thing with
It's
knife
just that,
fights.
it's just that the SVS SP2000s will be playing bass down to 20 hertz. The Martin Logans will not, so if you're going after having that nice, even more linear, uniform sound throughout your room, then you want to make sure that you have the two SVS subs, which will be the ones playing the majority of the 20 hertz bass, in the diagonally opposite, or opposing. If you're going with the midpoints of each wall, you'd have one at the front wall and one at the back wall, or one on each side wall. So I would suggest that way. I mean, personally, I wouldn't really go with the whole subwoofer crawl for one seat for all four subs. I would stick with the Harman recommendations because, in my experience, they work. But I totally agree. If you're willing to, by all means, try it. And
Yeah,
let
so
us know,
I'd be
because I'm not going to do it either.
I'd be absolutely fascinated to find out whether or not that how much of a difference you thought it made, and give those Martin Logans a nice hug before they leave the house. Before they go out into the world to go experience. And don't let them spend too much time with the SVSs, because the SVSs are just going to make them feel bad about themselves, and no one needs that.
Little pat on the amplifier.
All All right, I scrolled past his name. Matthew's also got the same guy. He's also got some Martin Logan ESL electrostatic speakers. He's wondering whether the Odyssey Multi QXT and this Onkyo receiver will still work with electrostatic speakers. He'd also like to know if Room EQ Wizard and a U-Mic 1 work well to help him EQ his room. He seemed so. Basically, when I read this question, it gave me pause for a second because Gene and I have talked about electrostatic speakers a lot, and one of the things that always comes up is like, I really want to review some. He's like, oh, they're a pain in the ass to measure. I'm like, yeah, that's your problem and not mine because I don't measure speakers. At that point, when I was asking, I didn't really measure speakers. And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing it. So I think what Matthew's getting at here is that electrostatic speakers are a pain to measure. And they are because they're dipoles, especially the Martin Logans with the big grills. They're dipoles, right? And, so the sound coming out, sound coming out the front, sound coming out the back, it sometimes messes with your mic. I'm sure Herb right now is twitching because he wants to say something. Herb's the owner of Cross Spectrum Labs. He does the mic calibration stuff. I'm sure he's got a lot to say on this, but he's not here, so we're going to go on with life, and he'll be here in spirit. So they are a pain to measure, but you need to come up with, come away from that and remember that measuring a speaker to get the true response of the speaker is not the same as what Odyssey does. What Odyssey's doing is really measuring your room, measuring the sound in your room, and trying to adjust your speakers based on that. Okay. Now, how well it will work with the electrostacks? It should work all right. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. If you run it and it sounds weird, I would call Odyssey and say, why does it sound weird? It shouldn't do that. Or I would run it again, do the thing with Rob with turning it to 0 and then try it again, but which I think is also magical thinking. But it should work. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't.
Yeah, Odyssey is still measuring the first arrival, the direct sound that traveled directly from the front of the speaker to the microphone, and then the reflected sound that arrives shortly after. It's still measuring that. Like Tom's saying, if you're trying to get the anechoic response of the speaker, then an electrostat is difficult to measure because the anechoic response doesn't tell you the full sound profile because just as much sound is coming out the back of the speaker as the front of the speaker. So it's really hard to put together all of that in an anechoic setting. But we're not measuring the anechoic response here. We're measuring the in-room response. All of those reflections will reach the microphone because they're coming out the back of the speaker, reflecting off of your walls, and arriving at the microphone shortly after the direct sound arrives. So there should be no problem. And as far as using Room EQ Wizard and the U-Mic 1, again, as long as what you're interested in are the in-room results, which would be the only reason to use an EQ that you're adjusting manually, this should work perfectly fine. So
yeah. I don't see any issues with it. I just can't imagine what. The only thing that I could possibly see that it might be an issue is if the fur filters that Odyssey uses in some way do not react the same in an ESL as they or the electrostat as it does with a normal direct drive, speaker. I just I just
sound
don't
is sound.
Sound is sound. So I don't really see how that could be an issue, but
no.
No,
I mean the only time it might have. Yeah, the only time it might have a problem is if you put the microphone 90 degrees to the side, because being a true dipole speaker, there's actually a null 90 degrees to the side. But you are never putting the microphone there if you're doing an Odyssey system. So yeah,
if you're sitting 90 degrees to the side of an electrostatic speaker, you are doing audio wrong. you have wasted your money, sir. You have just bring those speakers to somebody. Bring them to me. I would like to hear them. All right, we're down to Infinite Gary. Yes!
Yay! We're actually going to do this.
Gary! Sorry, Gary, we got to bump you for the next week.
Our apologies to Infinite Gary.
Our apologies to Infinite Gary, once again. You just have to be fine with your Infinite Baffle subwoofer. Anyways, okay, so Gary has a bunch of questions. So. He's going to be an early adopter of the Dolby Atmos because no matter what we say, he's going to do it. He's going to be he'll be using a 13 by 14 by 8 foot room, so small room. He currently has a Revel. Is it Revel or Revel?
Revel. They're
Okay.
Revel. Yeah, they're
I thought,
American and not French, so they don't
yeah,
pronounce it
they
strangely.
don't do all that
Unlike
pronunciation.
Focal, which is spelled like focal, but they're French, so it's Focal.
That's fine. Revel, he's got a Revel set up. Revel speakers are very nice, but he's planning on trying out the Pioneer Elite Dolby Atmos enabled speakers to see for himself how well the reflected sound off the ceiling works. Why, Gary? Why would
I'm
you? Why?
curious too.
Why? I am curious, but I'm not going to replace Revel speakers with freaking Pioneer home theater box speakers. I
They're
mean, how
not
can you?
home theater. These are the Pioneer Elite speakers, man. They're what, $1,400 a pair for the towers, and I forget
Whatever.
how much for the bookshelves, but yeah, they're more expensive. These ones, they're concentric drivers. They look quite nice, to be honest.
Okay. First of all, he wants to know whether or not we think he should get the tower. The bookshelf would be better as a front LR, left or right speaker, given his room size. Uh, Given the room size, there's no reason to get a tower. I mean, if you're going to put subwoofers in there, I assume the
This
man
is
has the
Gary.
infinite
He's
fat.
going to have
Yeah, he's going to have
subwoofers.
subwoofers in there. So yeah, you are in no way in need of a tower. I mean, am I off? Do you have any reason to suggest otherwise?
Absolutely not. In fact, there is an opposing reason to go for the bookshelf ones in this case, because one of the things is you do need some distance for all of the sound from all of the drivers in the speaker to sum together. It's supposed to sound as though they're coming from one point in space, not different vertical heights between where the treble came from and where the lower frequencies came from. So some distance does need to be there. A good rule of thumb is to take the distance between the tweeter and the lowest woofer in the speaker and multiply that by 4. So, if there's a 2-foot distance between the tweeter and the lowest woofer on the speaker, then you might want to sit about 8 feet away from that speaker. That will guarantee that you are beyond the quarter wavelength distance that would be necessary for all of the sound waves to sum together. So, in this case, since he's in this room that's only 13 by 14, the bookshelf speaker, to me, the more likely that you're never going to have a problem with all the sounds summing together. There might be a scenario where it wouldn't sum together properly with the tower. The bookshelf speaker from the Pioneer Elite series is a true three-way speaker. It has a tweeter and a mid-range in a concentric configuration, and then a dedicated bass woofer in that bookshelf too. So as far as output capabilities, being able to cross over to subwoofer, zero problems with the bookshelves in these cases. I would definitely choose them in this room size.
Number two, he's trying to decide on which AV receiver or pre-pro to buy, so maybe we could run through the pros and cons of various models that have been announced. I didn't do any research on this.
Luckily, I did. Shall I go through it as quickly as I am able? Because there's a number.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here's the crazy thing. Dolby Atmos coming out. It's a new thing. A lot of the receivers that have been announced don't even have Atmos built into them. They will only have Atmos decoding after a firmware update, which is supposed to be scheduled for September, October, November, before the end of the year, everyone is promising. So yeah, a little bit hinky on that side. But what it's really going to come down to is how many amplifiers are built into any given receiver, what type of amplifiers they are, the room correction that's being used, and the HDMI 2.0 implementation. So here's the deal. Onkyo and Integra, they're sister companies. Each of them already have 3 receivers out there. In Onkyo's case, it's the 636, 737, and 838. In Integra, it's the 30.6, 40.6, and 50.6. All of those are already on the market, and all of those will be upgradable to Dolby Atmos, but with a maximum of 7 speakers. That would be a 5.1.2 system, 2 overhead speakers only. All of those can only do a maximum of 7 speakers total, regardless. So this isn't really going to be suitable for what Gary wants to do. On the higher end of Onkyo and Integra, they have the 1030 and 3030 receivers, the 60.6 and 70.6 in the Integra lineup. Those ones can go up to 9 speakers for the 1030 and 60.6, or 11 speakers for the 3030 and 70.6. So that's getting you as many speakers as Atmos can do in the home right now in any of these receivers. So here's the thing. All of the Onkyo and Integra models, they will... it's so stupid, but they will do HDCP 2.2, which is the new high bandwidth digital content protection scheme that people are in the industry are convinced is necessary because they think people copy things by using the HDMI outputs. No one does, but apparently they don't know that. So they will do HDCP 2.2. They're the only companies that will, but they have to limit the bandwidth on their HDMI connections to do it. I'm more in favor of having the full bandwidth available because HDCP 2.2 isn't here yet and might never show up. We don't actually know that it's ever even going to be used. So I'm not a huge fan of that decision. I'm also really not a fan of Onkyo and Integra's decision to use only 2 DSP processing chips, which means they have to basically use the most rudimentary form of setup and EQ. They've got their own proprietary thing called ACU EQ, and by all accounts from anyone who's used it so far, it's kind of a piece of junk. So, not a fan of that decision. They
Shocking,
do have
absolutely no one.
They do have a couple of pre-pros as well, very high-end models, the SC5530 from Onkyo and the DHC80.6 from Integra. Same situations there, though. They can go up to 11 speakers. They're just pre-pros. They don't have any amps built in, but same thing. They still only have 2 DSP chips, still have the limited bandwidth on HDMI, so I'm not a fan of Onkyo and Integra's offerings. Next, we come to Denon and Marantz. Denon has a couple of AV receivers they've announced, the X4100 and the X5200. Those can do 9 or 11 speakers total, respectively. However, you have to add an external 2-channel amp to get there. So it's starting to get crazy confusing, but that's what these things can do. Marantz is the sister company to Denon. They have the SR7009 receiver, and they have the AV7702 Pre-Pro. Those can go up to a maximum of 11 speakers. Again, you have to add a 2-channel external amp to the receiver. Now, Denon and Marantz decided to go with 4 DSP chips inside. That was so that they could do the Atmos processing and still do Odyssey Mult-EQ XT32 with Sub-EQ HT, which is the room correction program that I like the best. So they've got that. They've got the full bandwidth available in HDMI. They do not have HDCP 2.2. So I'm kind of most interested in the Denon and Marantz offerings just because I like their room correction the best. The other companies that are doing Atmos are Yamaha. Yamaha has their RX A2040 and A3040. They did kind of a cool thing, which they have a new auto setup program that actually does measure the angles of the speakers. Unfortunately, it does not apply to Atmos. What a wonderful decision. The reason they threw in this new thing is so that you could have the overhead speakers for Atmos, and then they could compensate for those new positions when you're using Yamaha's own presence speakers, which is something they've had for a long time. The presence speakers used to go directly above your front, left, and right speakers and your surround back speakers on the walls. Now we have these new ceiling positions, so they're like, well, we can compensate for our processing, but we're not going to bother using the room correction for Atmos, which is where it would be the most helpful. So I'm not fond of that decision. So finally, we come to Pioneer. All of Pioneer's 3 receivers are exceedingly similar. I am having a heck of a time finding any differences between them. They are the SC85, 87, and 89. The 85 and 87 look identical, except the 87 is like 5 watts per channel more powerful in the amps. I saw no other feature changes. And the SC89 seems to just add HD base T, which is a crazy connection for a second room. That seems to be the only difference, and apparently that's worth an extra $1,000. So I have no idea what the feature differences are.
Well, HDBaseT allows you to run a huge, long HDMI run, basically, without, I mean, you want like Cat 5.
But is that worth $1,000?
It is if you're trying to run something all the way. Hey, you could easily spend that and get an optical cable, because that's what you'd have to use, or an HDMI repeater thing. Yeah, it is.
But all of these Pioneers can do a maximum of 9 speakers. They can do 5.1.4 or 7.1.2. None of them can do 11 speakers, which is kind of weird considering one of them costs $3,000. The big differences here, though, are Pioneer is back to using Class D amplifiers. Now they've gone over to Bang & Olufsen, and they're licensing their Ice Block amplifiers, which by all accounts are probably the most stable, reliable Class D amplifiers that are out there right now.
Not the most linear.
They're not the most linear. They're not perfect with every speaker, but Andrew Jones is a smart enough guy that he's probably made sure that Pioneer's own receivers can at least drive his Pioneer Elite branded Atmos speakers. Guess it's not a guarantee, but I would assume at least that much. The one thing that I really like that Pioneer has done is they have developed a completely new version of their room correction thing. They're calling it MCACC Pro, and it is actually doing quite a bit more, measuring things like impulse response, delay between the first arrival and the reflected sound, measuring more things in the reflected sound and trying to do more to control that. And Chris Walker from Pioneer specifically said he begged the Japanese engineers to develop this because they specifically wanted to do this reflected sound off the ceiling. And they needed a new measurement technique to make sure that they were measuring the reflected sound off the ceiling and not the direct sound. Because some sound, even though the speaker driver for the ceiling speakers is aiming upward, some sound is still going to come directly at you. You know, it's going to come basically at 90 degrees to the driver, but there's still going to be some direct sound. So he basically made sure that they developed a new MCACC Pro program so that they would be measuring the reflected sound off the ceiling, not the first direct sound from that upward-facing driver. So I like that very much. I know that Gary only wants to do 9 speakers anyway. I actually kind of think Class D amplifiers, when you're trying to drive 9 speakers out of one receiver, makes a heck of a lot of sense, because trying to drive 9 or 11 Class AB amplifiers off of one power supply usually doesn't work out so great. So overall, I kind of like Pioneer Elite's offerings the best this year. Yeah, that's the rundown. I don't think it's going to get any better than that.
Yeah, well, and my suggestion is to wait till next year. But he wants to be an early adopter, so good on him, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. Is that just question 1? Where are we at?
1 and 2. We're into speculation time.
Oh, we're in speculation time. Okay, good. All right. Okay, this is the speculation time. This is stuff from last week that we didn't do. All right, so we're looking into our crystal ball now. We're making some predictions. All right, so I guess write these down. Do we think Atmos will eventually be in every AV receiver, just like True HD and DTS HD are today? Over the short term, I'm going to say yes. Over the long term, I think I'm going to say yes, because Dolby's been around for a really long time, and we're going to still see it. I don't think we're going to see much use of Dolby Atmos. I think 5 years from now, it's going to be a thing that's there that we never do anything with.
I think absolutely it'll be in there, because it's just going to become part of the Dolby chip and licensing. It's all just going to be bundled anyway. You know, not this year or next year, but in a couple of years, yeah, I think it'll be everywhere. And the fact that the minimum setup is 7 speakers, 5.1.2. I mean, 7-channel receivers are already pretty ubiquitous. You almost have to search for one that's only 5.1. So I absolutely think it's going to be extremely commonplace. That's my prediction.
Yeah, but will it be used?
Will it be used by most people?
Yeah,
probably
or anybody,
not.
really. Yeah.
I mean, probably not.
All right, how do we predict Atmos in homes will develop over the next few years? Lots of speaker manufacturers getting on board with the Atmos-enabled speakers and modules. Single speaker surround speakers that try to act like 3 or more speakers. Sound bars. What do we see happening with speakers? You go first this time.
Okay. You know what? I actually think Atmos is going to be more popular in the cheapest products than it is in the expensive products. I think anyone who wants to really do full-blown Atmos with an expensive system is going to end up with full-blown in-ceiling installed speakers, or speakers that they're hanging off of their ceiling. I think the higher-end speaker manufacturers are never going to bother with Dolby Atmos models or Dolby Atmos enabled speakers that have the upward facing drivers built into them. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think it's actually going to be the home theater in a box. I mean, Onkyo already has a home theater in a box with Dolby Atmos enabled speakers. And I do think we're going to have Dolby Atmos sound bars. I really do think that's going to happen. We're going to have a sound bar up at the front of your room that's going to have upward facing drivers trying to reflect sound all over the room like
Yamaha's
crazy.
going to do that for sure.
Yamaha's definitely going to do that. I do think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to have more than 11 channels in the regular sort of consumer space. I mean, we already know Trinov is doing this 32 speaker capable thing, but I really don't think we're ever going to go above 11. I think that's where it tops out, 7.1.4.
Okay. I think Rob's right in that you're only ever going to really see Dolby Atmos speakers in home theater and boxes. I don't think they'll be used properly. I don't think that people are going to go, oh, I got the because of the Atmos. No one's going to. I mean, they may say that, but they're not going to have any idea what they're talking about, and they're not going to really use it. And that's not that's not a negative. It's just I think that's the way it's going to kind of work out. I think that you're right. The major manufacturers are not going to be interested in putting together specific speaker packages. You may see, I think what we may see is like tiny bookshelf speakers that are designed to be placed on top and maybe aimed up. You might see stuff
those
like
are
that.
the modules. Yeah, the add-on
Well,
modules.
I'm talking about like I think that even some of the companies, I think companies like DefTech, like for some reason I think DefTech is over there going, I can't wait to put out a Dolby.
Well, they already have. They already announced their module that can add on to one of their existing towers.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see more stuff like that that's going to come out. I just honestly don't see. I just don't see people installing stuff in their ceilings. I just don't see that being a thing that happens. So I think the only way we're going to see this is from reflected sound. I think the reflected sound is not going to It's not going to work that well. Maybe it'll work okay, but maybe it won't. I think more likely it won't. And I just don't see this being something that's going to be going to have a lot of adoption. Surround bars, yeah, like I said. Yamaha certainly is going to do one, that sort of stuff. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, sound bars are home theaters and boxes. There's more expensive ones and there's less expensive ones, and they are basically home theaters in the box. But real home theaters, I don't think we're going to see a lot of Dolby Atmos. Number 3, there seem to be many more Blu-ray discs with DTS HD master audio. That's true. Versus the Dolby True HD soundtracks. Will Atmos increase Dolby's share of the Blu-ray releases, or might we see Atmos soundtracks and DTS HD format? Well, as I'm sure Rob's going to explain in detail, it's good. It's all ends up being PCM anyways, so it all gets mixed to PCM. It's just how it's stored. So the DTS is stored. Might this we see? Yeah, I absolutely think that we're going to see a lot more Dolby stamps on Blu-ray discs in the future. And I'm sure DTS is over there going, what? We did this first. We have our Neo thingy that nobody does ever. We did this. Hey, that guy Rob, he's got a bunch of our speakers. Like you're the guy. Other point
I am the guy.
You're
the
guy.
one guy on the Audioholics forum who has 11 speakers. Literally, out of that poll, I am the one guy with 11 speakers.
So yeah, for sure. But just because it has Dolby Atmos doesn't mean it won't have DTS HD. It very well may have both.
Yeah. So I mean, I do think. I mean, the 200 or so movies that we know have either already been mixed or are coming out in Dolby Atmos format, Dolby is going to be pushing to get all of those onto Blu-ray, and they do want to increase their share of how many things have the True HD with Atmos logo on the Blu-ray box. So yeah, I think that'll help there. Whether or not I mean, I know plenty of people who go out to buy a movie and they accidentally buy the DVD and don't even realize it. Like,
God.
So is
the
how many
times my wife has come home from Target, like, oh, so and so picked up a movie, and was like, okay, frickin' 4:3 format. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? She's like, oh, it was $5. I'm like, it's because it's garbage. It's gonna have black bars all over the damn place. Are you kidding me? Like, oh, the kids don't care. I'm like, it's like saying that you dropped a bunch of food on the floor, the kids will eat it because the kids don't care. You still don't give them garbage. I don't give them 4:3 movies. That's garbage.
In standard def, no less. But yeah, so I mean, I really, really, really do not think the average consumer is going to be looking for the True HD with Atmos logo on their Blu-ray purchases. That
Yeah.
is just not going to be a thing. But I do think there will be more movies with True HD as a result. Now, DTS actually already has developed their own very, very similar object-based audio format. Well, they acquired SRS Labs, and SRS Labs are the ones who developed this multi-dimensional audio format, and so now that belongs to DTS. So DTS has already gone ahead and branded that as DTS UHD, because why not muddy the waters even
Don't we already
further?
have a UHD?
Well, see,
I
they
thought
have
we had.
DTS HD, and we have ultra high definition televisions, so why shouldn't we have DTS UHD audio? Why not? Let's just go ahead and do that. Anyway, nothing has yet been made in DTS UHD. There's no announcements of it. People are asking, will these first Atmos-enabled receivers get a firmware update if DTS UHD ever hits the market? I have no idea, but we do know that DTS likes to go toe-to-toe with Dolby at every step of the way, so I'm sure they are working feverishly to try and get DTS UHD onto the market, and Lord help me if they decide that the ceiling speakers ought to go in slightly different locations, because
Oh
that's
God,
just
it
the
is
type of thing
exactly what
someone
they're
would
gonna
do.
do.
Someone would
That's
do.
exactly what they're gonna do. You know that. You know that. They're like,
But
oh,
yeah,
now you got to put them on the floor by your feet. Shut up. Stop it. Stop
but
making me
because of
move.
all of that, what we're not going to see are Blu-ray releases that have a DTS HD master audio soundtrack with Dolby Atmos. We're not
Yeah.
going to see that. What Tom said, we might see a disc that has true HD with Dolby Atmos, and in addition to that, a separate 7.1 DTS HD master audio track. So it actually has two completely separate audio tracks. We
Yeah.
might see that, but we won't see DTS HD
No.
master audio with Atmos. That won't be the storage format. We won't see that.
No. We won't see that for sure. All right. Number 4 and last before we
Yes.
end this podcast. How long
Yes.
have we been going? Is it like forever?
We're right up to the edge.
Jeez. Dolby, FAC, and Onkyo's videos both make mention of Atmos AV receivers being able to have our technology automatically adapt stereo, 5.1 or 7.1 contact to the full capabilities of your new system, including your overhead speakers. Will this work for DTS formats too, or only for Dolby formats? Well,
This is the one. Yeah, this is the one where we're talking about existing things, ones that already exist, all the discs you already own, and those all get decoded into PCM inside of your receiver. And at that point, it's just PCM audio, and you can apply whatever kind of processing you want to it. So that's what they're talking about here, this Dolby Atmos processing. That's the same thing as Dolby Pro Logic 2X, Dolby Pro Logic 2Z, any of those, things that process things on top of what was already there. This is just another way of doing that and making use of the in-ceiling or ceiling reflected speakers instead. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to decode an existing DTS soundtrack and then apply the Atmos processing to it. That's a
right.
different thing from the soundtrack actually being encoded that way from the start. So yeah, I think that should work.
Yeah, should be fun. All right, let's into that. All right, you can contact us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com, website, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, and of course, Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me. It's been a very long pod.
Yes, to Carlos and Jared, who had questions about us making lists about speakers and demo material, we will get to that on a future podcast.
Or not. We will see.
Well, I can list some of my favorite speakers. I can do that.
I can list favorite speakers, but I don't think I can
that's
do
only
it for
one,
every.
man.
It says for various price points. I can't do that. I haven't listened to that many in every single price point. Even if I have, I can't remember them. It's been so long. All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Holy crap, that was forever. Guys, for the YouTube guys, will start to hang out in a few minutes here, just like always. See you soon.